US now, with the latest round of impeachment hearings have been heard in Washington, D.C. We're going to hear from Bruce Wolpe in a moment, but House lawmakers are considering which articles of impeachment to bring forward against the president.
You're going to try to overturn the result of an election with unelected people giving
Gentlemen will suspend.
The hearing began with fireworks between lawmakers and protests from an audience member who supports the president. Democrats and Republicans both have a lawyer laying out their case for and against President Trump's impeachment.
The evidence is overwhelming that the president abused his power by pressuring Ukraine and its new president to investigate a political opponent.
To impeach a president who 63 million people voted for over 8 lines in a call transcript is baloney.
House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler opened the hearing arguing President Trump betrayed his oath of office. Chairman Nadler was referring to President Trump's request to his Ukrainian counterpart to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter.
President Trump put himself before country.
Republicans in the Judiciary Committee defended President Trump, saying the impeachment hearings are an attempt to overturn the results of the 2016 election because they say Democrats don't like that President Trump won.
They can't get over the fact Donald Trump is president of the United States, and they don't have a candidate that they think can beat him.
Joining us now, our regular US expert, Bruce Wolpe. Bruce, what have you made of developments overnight? I want to ask you about the FBI and Department of Justice report on the investigation into Trump and Russia. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, on the impeachment hearings, what has happened overnight that we need to know?
Thank you, Kieran, and good morning. It was dramatic and testy, but not explosive or anything like that. It was a really procedural hearing to advance the consideration of impeachment. The lawyers on both sides testifying before the Judiciary Committee on what the findings were and were not from the Republican point of view as far as impeachment is concerned. And this sort of completes the record for the Judiciary Committee, and I think by this time tomorrow, we'll see draft articles of impeachment to be taken up by the Judiciary Committee, and then votes on it later in the week, certainly by Friday. And there will be 2 categories. One will be abuse of power, the president using his power over Ukraine to extort the president of Ukraine for personal political purposes, and the second on obstruction of Congress and its oversight and investigation role in withholding information, witnesses, documents from congressional processes. There may be other things that'll be very interesting, but this is proceeding on track from the Democrats' point of view quite quickly, and it'll really flare into dramatic territory in the next 2 days.
So, in terms of the next few weeks, though, we've got Christmas, and then we turn our attention to the primaries, Iowa, New Hampshire, and so on. We're into the presidential season. How soon do the Democrats want this wrapped up? Because quite clearly they're not going to have enough Republican support to get rid of the president.
They'll have 0 Republican support. I think they want to move quickly because of the presidential, the Democratic primaries that are coming up. Also to get on with the nation's business, which is what the American people send people to Congress to do. And because there's concern that if they don't tie it down now, it will linger, fester. Other extraneous issues will come into it, like the Russia probe and things that were not resolved through the Mueller report, and just become a weight on the Democrats. And they don't want to do that. So they believe they have a very hard, tight case, irrevocable, that they want to go forward with. So I would expect the House to vote on impeachment before Christmas, the Senate trial to begin in early to mid-January, about 3 or 4 weeks, so that this process will be completed by early February.
President Trump responded overnight to the Department of Justice report on the start of the FBI investigation into the Russia links. Here was the president overnight.
It's a disgrace what's happened with respect to the things that were done to our country. It should never again happen to another president. It is incredible, far worse than I would have ever thought possible. And it's an embarrassment to our country. It's dishonest. They had known nothing. It was concocted. And you say what you want. That was probably something that's never happened in the history of our country.
See, this is the question in a political sense, Bruce. Does the impeachment, does it all feed into the Trump narrative that he's fighting against the system? Does this help him to win re-election next year?
Oh, he believes he's been under attack from day one, even before he became president, and that this was an assault on him and his legitimacy. He also called the Mueller report an attempted overthrow of the government. And I think what's interesting as far as Australia is concerned here is that the report that the president was just talking about, the Inspector General report into the origins of the Mueller probe, shows that that investigation started because of what happened in London when Alexander Downer met with the representative of the Trump campaign, and that representative informed the ambassador that the Russians had hacked into Hillary Clinton's emails, and that in fact Hillary information would start leaching into the process, which is exactly what happened. So the Australian government reported that ultimately to the U.S. government, and the Mueller probe was launched. But what's so interesting over the past few hours is the Attorney General has attacked this report, saying it's wrong, insufficient, and that it should have been much harder in finding exculpatory information for the president. But he said the FBI launched its investigation, quote, on the thinnest of suspicions. And those thinnest of suspicions began with what the Australian government told the U.S. government. So the question is, does Trump feel aggrieved by what Australia did in 2016 in reporting this Russian activity to U.S. authorities? And will Trump seek retribution from Australia because of what happened here? That is an unanswered. So I think Australia's in a danger zone unless this is clarified and everyone understands that Australia acted with the best of intentions as a loyal, patriotic ally to when they saw something that could corrupt the American political system, they reported it to the authorities. And I think that's really a live issue here.
So who would you like to see make that case now to the White House? Is it the outgoing ambassador, Joe Hockey, who's got very strong links to the Trump administration, or is it the incoming ambassador, Sinodinos, or does the Prime Minister need to phone President Trump to just assuage him about this particular issue?
I think the outcome of this issue, Kieran, will rest on what the Attorney General, William Barr, is telling the President about this. If the Attorney General says, I don't see that Australia did anything wrong here, it's what the United States would have done if it saw a friendly country, an ally, under threat from a foreign power, and you report it to the lawful authorities and then let them take it wherever it goes. Trump trusts the Attorney General to the nth degree. We've just seen it consistently. So if the Attorney General is saying that this investigation started on the thinnest of suspicions and that what Australia presented was of the thinnest of suspicions and therefore there was something wrong or tainted about what Australia did, I think that poses, again, I call it a danger zone. Now, it may well be that everything is absolutely fine and the Attorney General has let the President know, don't hold Australia responsible for this. But if that is not the case, just given the wide-ranging relationship, the trade relationship, you know, Australia has been exempted from certain tariffs on steel and aluminum. But we saw last week with Brazil and Argentina, Trump didn't like what they're doing. Boom, tariffs are back. Well, is Australia going to be vulnerable because the president is angry about how the Russia probe started? I think that is the issue to be resolved.
Yep, okay, we will see how it resolves itself. The Morrison government will be watching very closely as well. Bruce Wolpe, thank you.